Lost Ark is coming out worldwide pretty soon here, and just in time for the beta release, I wanted to do a quick rundown of each of the available classes to help you decide which one's the right choice for you. Not going to waste any more of your time, so let's get into it. There are 5 classes to choose from, each with different subclasses that further define your playstyle. We have warriors, mages, martial artists, gunners, and assassins. Each subclass has their own identity skill that makes them unique from the others. First up in the warrior class is the Berserker. He's the least tanky of the warrior classes, but is still very durable, great damage output, and a whole lot of super armor to prevent his attacks from getting interrupted. His attacks hit very hard but come out pretty slowly. His identity skill lets him build up rage through fighting enemies, which he can activate to increase his damage output, make him move faster, and give him access to a powerful finishing move. In PvP, he's pretty good, but his lack of great CC options make it harder for him to get his high damaging moves out. If you have good team play, this is way less of a problem though. Next we have the Paladin, formerly called the Holy Knight. This is the manly support character. Not only does he have great damage output and survivability, he can buff the damage of his allies and provide everyone with heals and shields. His identity skill is a Scale of Faith that slowly fills up during combat and lets you use special skills to buff his own damage or the damage of his team. An invaluable character in both PvE and PvP. He's adaptable and has plenty of means to stun or interrupt his enemies and keep his own teammates powerful. He's fantastic in team-based PvP modes and raid content in PvE. The last warrior available is the Gunlancer, formerly called the Warlord. The tankiest character in the game by far. He has amazing stats and does a crazy amount of damage for a tank character. His mobility isn't very good, but it doesn't really matter when you can just face tank everything. His identity skill is a slow filling stamina bar that lets him either shield himself to near immortality, which still lets him attack and use his skills, or jump to an area and make himself and nearby allies immortal for a short time at the cost of not being able to move or attack during it. In PvP, he's incredible at keeping his teammates alive and drawing aggro. He's almost unbeatable in a 1v1 against other melee characters, but he can be kited around by a lot of characters since his mobility's pretty bad. Then we have mages, with the summoner up first. This is a super satisfying class to play and has a lot of high damaging AoE abilities that make her a monster in both PvE and PvP. She's not too difficult to play, and she provides a lot of sustained damage through all of her summons that can always be dealing damage whenever she's unable to. Her identity skill lets her get ancient energy from attacking enemies that can be used to summon ancient gods for a powerful attack. You do need to stay back and keep careful as you're pretty squishy and don't have a lot of mobility options, but she's a fantastic class all around. In PvP, she's a big threat due to her summons giving enemies more threats to deal with, and she has plenty of great CC abilities to help lock down enemies. After that comes the Bard, the closest thing to a true support class in Lost Ark. She's a bit less aggressive than the Paladin, but she does a fair bit of damage as well. Bards mostly focus on buffing their teammates' damage and survivability, while providing shields and heals to everyone in the meantime. No player will ever turn down a Bard on the team, regardless of whether you're in PvP or PvE. Her identity skill lets her store chords, which can be played to buff the damage output of the team or give everyone a nice heal. Bards are invaluable for late game content, and in PvP especially, providing teammates with offensive and defensive buffs will always be a game changer. She can also provide her teammates with some immunity to CC effects, which I believe is exclusive to the Bard. If you want to focus purely on supporting your team, there really is no better choice. The next class type is the Martial Artists, with the first up being the Wardancer, formerly called the Battlemaster. She has super high mobility and quick attacks, making her very hard to pin down. She's a very combo heavy character with plenty of AoE damage. She also has a bit of damage reduction she can provide herself and the team, and because of that she can actually frontline pretty well if the team needs her to. Her identity skill lets her charge up elemental energy through combat, which she can use for crazy elemental attacks like turning into a tornado. In PvP, she struggles a bit since it can be hard for her to lock people down and get her damage off, but she can do pretty well with a team built around her. The Striker is the male version of the Wardancer. He's slightly different in that he uses up slightly less mana with his attacks, and he trades a lot of the survivability and damage reduction of the Wardancer for a bit more offensive power. He also has more damage output than her and is better at keeping targets locked down with CC, but they're mostly the same outside of that. Now we have the Scrapper, formerly called the Infighter. The Scrapper is another combo-heavy character. They have ridiculous mobility and great ways to stick to enemies, lots of low cooldown abilities and good damage, but she's pretty vulnerable to hard CC. Her weaknesses are similar to the Wardancer, and she struggles a bit in PvP for similar reasons. Her identity skill is 2 separate energies, which she uses instead of mana for her abilities. Consuming energy of one ability type will fill up the other, so as long as you're keeping your combos varied, you'll never need to stop putting out damage in order to refuel. The Scrapper is a great pick for some up-close, sustained damage. Last up for martial artists is the Soulfist, formerly called the Soul Master. A perfect blend of Kung Fu and Dragon Ball Z, the Soul Master has great mobility and damage reduction abilities. She deals good damage and has great CC, but is very difficult to master. Her identity skill is her Ki system, which is the resource that's used up with her abilities. If you run out of Ki, you can do a Ki explosion in order to refill your energy and go up a Ki level. The first time you do this, you'll move to Ki level 2, which moderately buffs your damage output and your cooldowns. Doing this again will take you to level 3, which grants you a major increase in damage and cooldown reduction. These levels only last a short while though, and once you've run out of juice at level 3, you'll be reverted back to level 1 for a while. The Soulfist is all about staying safe at those lower Ki levels and making the most out of your insane power spikes before your window of opportunity vanishes. She's a fantastic character in PvP, provided your team can protect you when you're powered down. The Gunners are up next, and I'll start with the Sharpshooter, formerly called the Hawkeye. The Sharpshooter is very much a glass cannon damage character. Amazing single target and AoE damage, plenty of CC, and very long range. If enemies manage to get on top of him though, he's practically dead, but he does have a few ways of escaping. He also has invisibility, which is a huge help in PvP, and he isn't reliant on teammates as much as other characters are. His identity skill lets him summon a mechanical bird that periodically attacks enemies, and you can command the bird to deal some AoE damage or kamikaze him for a high damage explosion. Sharpshooter is a great damage character for people who hate relying on their teammates. The Deadeye is up next, formerly called the Devil Hunter. He's another self-reliant damage character, but he's much harder to master than the Sharpshooter. His identity skill is his ability to swap between 3 weapons, handguns, a shotgun, and a rifle. Each of these weapons has their own set of abilities that you need to manage the cooldowns of to get the most out of your potential damage. You're a very flexible damage dealer since you can switch between different ranges of damage. The Deadeye's most powerful weapon is the shotgun, so you'll be relying on it a lot to deal with melee characters in PvP and focusing a lot on back attacks against bosses in PvE. He doesn't have a whole lot of survivability though, so you'll need to be pretty careful with your positioning. The Gunslinger is the female version of the Deadeye. She works mostly the same, except she's more reliant on her long-range weapons and skills than the Deadeye is. She has amazing sustained damage, but is weaker in close-up engagements. She's definitely the safer character of the two, since you aren't nearly as reliant on being close-up to maximize your damage output. The final gunner is the Artillerist, formerly called the Blaster. The Artillerist has the highest damage output of the gunners by far, but he's very slow and has practically no mobility skills. He specializes in heavy, slow-firing weapons and can provide the team with a great burst of damage or sustained damage up close. Since he's so slow, he's pretty reliant on his teammates keeping him safe though. In PvP, the Artillerist can be fantastic if his teammates are focused on keeping the heat off of him, and the same could be said for PvE content. His identity skill lets him transform into turret mode, planting him in place and giving him some serious firepower for a short while. If you can find the time to set up, you'll be putting out some absurd damage numbers. The last 2 classes to talk about are the Assassins. The Deathblade, formerly known as just the Blade, is probably the best all-rounder class. Beginner friendly, but still interesting and fun to play. Good at just about everything, but not a standout in any field. Good damage, mobility, super armor, and CC. Your identity skill lets you store up charges, which can be activated, letting you move faster, attack faster, and deal more damage for a short time. They're a great pick for PvP content as well, since their speed and CC abilities really complement aggressive strategies. If you're torn between multiple classes, the Deathblade will almost always be a safe, fun pick. And the final class of them all is the Shadowhunter, formerly called the Demonic. A hybrid of melee and ranged, the Demonic is the edgier and bloodier of the two assassins. She has great mobility and crowd control with the high damage output you'd expect from an assassin class. Very great all around, just like the Deathblade, but also lacking in supportive skills. Her identity skill allows her to transform into a demon for a short time, giving her better survivability and making her immune to staggers, which is always a powerful effect. She's very positioning based and rewarding to play, making her one of my favorite classes in the game. And that'll do it for all the classes in the beta. I hope this video helped you out a bit in figuring out what you're looking for, and I wish you the best of luck in Lost Ark. Have fun, and I'll see you later.